Story time about how my brother caught me making out with his girlfriend. Growing up, I didn't have a really good relationship with my parents or with my brother. The only person that I did get along with was my sister. You see, we're kind of a religious family. When I was 15, I knew that I liked girls, but there was no way that I would tell my parents that I did. They would never accept that their daughter liked other girls. I basically suppressed all of those feelings for about 5 years. When I turned 20, I decided to come out to my sister. My sister was super open, accepting, and she was really loving about it. She never once made me feel bad. I asked her what she thought about me telling the rest of the family, and she said definitely not. She knew that our parents would freak. I finally got my first girlfriend a year after that. I actually met her on my 21st birthday. At this point, I still live with my parents, so I basically said that she was a best friend of mine. My parents, of course, believed me because they had no other reason not to. She would come over to my house, and we would just spend time together there. She eventually got really upset that I would never tell my parents about us, and she decided to break up with me because of it. Of course, I was brokenhearted about it, but 3 weeks later, I met my brother's now girlfriend. Right off the bat, we got along really well. Like I said before, I never had a really good relationship with my brother. He suspected that I liked girls, but he never came out and told me. But because of this, there was always tension between us. Also, I never understood why his girlfriend liked him because he has no personality and zero sense of humor, which is honestly why I think her and I got along so well. Anytime she came over to our house, I would just find her so funny. My brother had to go out of town for work, so she invited me to go out with her friends for lunch. Of course, I quickly accepted. I honestly didn't realize it at the time, but I was definitely developing a crush on her. She was my kind of girl. I mean, I guess my brother and I have the same type. She was funny and incredibly smart. After that lunch, she asked me if I wanted to hang out another 2 times when my brother was away. Everything was going pretty well, but after the 3rd time that we hung out, I couldn't stop thinking about her. I knew this was going to be a really big problem for me. I'm the kind of person that's always honest with people as much as I can. When my brother finally came back, she started coming over to the house more. I was both excited but worried at the same time because I knew that I had feelings for her. One day she came over, but there was nobody home. That's when I decided to be honest with her and tell her the truth. I opened up to her and told her my history and that I had a crush on her. She smiled and told me that it was okay. That's when she grabbed my hand and we started kissing. Trust me, I know that it's totally wrong because she's my brother's girlfriend, but I was falling in love with her. That's when my brother comes in and sees us making up. That's when my brother comes in and catches me making out with his girlfriend. He instantly went berserk and started punching a hole through a wall. His girlfriend tried to calm him down, but he told her that if she touched him, he would probably end up hitting her. Luckily, no one else in the house was home, but my brother threatened to tell my parents. Like I said in part 1, my parents are very religious, and I knew that they would never accept me as I am. That's when my brother said that he had already been suspecting of me and his girlfriend because her and I had been hanging out so much. He then started calling me a bunch of names like freak and other really inappropriate things. Then the fight became about him and his girlfriend. His girlfriend started telling him that she had been miserable the whole time that she was with him and that he had been manipulating her the whole time. She told him he was even toxic, which I can believe because my brother's kind of like that. She then left the house and told him that she never wanted to see him again. My brother started asking me a bunch of questions like how long I had been seeing her. I told him that this was the first time her and I had ever kissed. Then he told me that I needed a man to teach me how to be a woman. So instead of staying and arguing with him, I decided to leave. I decided to go ahead and tell my parents the truth before my brother did. I was absolutely petrified. I told my parents that I like girls, and I told them what had happened with my brother's girlfriend. That's when my dad told me that they weren't upset that I like girls, and that they would have accepted me either way. But they were really upset that I had hurt my brother's feelings, and that I caused them to break up. They were surprisingly okay with what I had told them. I mean, after years of being petrified of them knowing the truth, I felt so free. But I also told them that my brother had been toxic towards her and that's why she didn't want to be with him anymore. My parents actually ended up being more angry with my brother than with me. But you'll never guess, a few months later my brother told my parents that he's bi. I haven't contacted my brother's ex, but I really feel like I should. I mean, I was falling in love with her. What do you guys think I should do? Story time about how I'm still in love with my toxic ex. This is really complicated, but please hear me out before you start judging me in the comments. Ex and I dated for exactly 1 year. When we first met, he was super charming, cute. I mean, he was like the perfect boyfriend. My family loved him, but gradually he started changing. The more serious we got about the relationship, the worse he became. For example, at the beginning of our relationship, we always used to hang out with our friends, and sometimes I would hang out with my own friends on my own. But 2 months into the relationship, he began guilting me. He would tell me that I would rather hang out with my friends, which wasn't even true, and then I would end up staying home, and then he would go out with his friends. He would also tell my parents sometimes that I needed to be taught lessons, like how to respect men and stuff, stuff. My parents detested him. One time he came over for Thanksgiving and basically told me that I needed to go change my clothes. He even said that I looked like a whore in front of my cousin. After that, my cousin really hated him and began doing her own research. She found that he was liking girls' pictures on Instagram and that he was leaving dirty comments on their pictures. Once she found all this information, she told me and I confronted him. He told me that he had every right to comment on anyone's pictures because it was just the internet and it wasn't real life. I kind of had to accept what he said because I didn't want any more problems. I asked my cousin to stop searching stuff, but she just didn't let up. Almost every single week, she would send me screenshots of things that he'd comment on girls' pictures. Finally, I told my boyfriend that my cousin had found all this out, and he basically forced me to cut her out of my life. Now, I know what you're thinking, why would I stay with him? But when things were good, they were really good. He was super loving, affectionate, he always wanted to be with me, and he always prioritized going on dates and having fun. He would always surprise me with fun things. One time he planned this beautiful picnic, and we even stayed in the park and spent the night there. But then he would manage to ruin everything by becoming really jealous and controlling. My dream job was to work in marketing, and I just happened to land this internship at a really popular fashion magazine. When I told him I got the job, he acted really strange. He didn't even congratulate me. A few hours later, he told me that I was trying too hard and that he didn't want a girlfriend that was going to be at work all the time. He also asked me how much I was going to be getting paid because he wanted to make sure it was less than what he earned. So in other words, he was jealous and envious at the same time. Then he insisted that I work around his schedule, so I could only work the days that he was working. Then he told me that if I wasn't spending enough time with him because of my new job, he would break up with me. I took that as the last straw. It was my dream job, but he was making everything terrible. While my entire family was so happy for me, I was crying in bed at night. The next morning, I woke up and texted him and told him that I didn't want to see him. He ran straight to my house. We got in his car to talk, and I proceeded to tell him everything I thought. Then he turned it all around and told me that I wasn't the girl that he fell in love with, and that if I didn't change, he would break up with me. After I told him that I needed him to change, he basically turned everything around and told me that I wasn't the girl that he fell in love with anymore, and that I was the one that needed to change if I wanted to continue in the relationship. And to top it all off, he kicked me out of his car. We didn't speak for about 2 weeks. During that time, I started at my dream job and everything was actually going pretty well. I didn't have the pressure on top of me about him not wanting me to work, and my life was actually getting better. My skin started clearing up and I even started losing weight. In other words, I was really happy. My parents and family were so happy too. But then I see that he starts posting other girls on his Instagram. I knew that he was doing it on purpose, so I tried not to get upset, but I just couldn't help it. Then I made a huge mistake. I messaged him and asked him if he still loved me. Then he called me and we talked on the phone for about 4 hours. By the end of the phone call, we were back together. And guess what? We even agreed to moving in together. I made him promise that he wouldn't be jealous anymore and that he would stop trying to control everything I did. He promised up and down that he would never be that way again. But literally 3 days later, he comes over super drunk, demanding you know what. I said no because my parents were home and I wasn't gonna do that in the house with them. Then of course he starts threatening me again, saying that if I don't do it, I don't love him and blah blah blah. So I took advantage and I kicked him out of the house. Then he sent me an essay of a text message breaking up with me and telling me how he doesn't love me anymore. It's been 2 months since that happened. Once again, I'm doing great at work. My family and I are super happy, but I actually miss him. Not only do I miss him, I'm so jealous all the time because I see he's posting girls on his Instagram. I miss being with him and I miss having fun with him, but I don't miss always feeling scared and nervous. I even tried dating a few guys, but nobody compares to him. A few weeks ago, I went on a date with this really nice guy. We connected and went on a few more dates. I posted on my story that I was on a date and my ex went crazy. He actually showed up at the restaurant and told me to come out and talk to him. And I did. I literally left the guy that I was on a date with to go speak to my ex. He told me to leave with him and I said no. He grabbed my purse and threw it on the ground and told me that he would never speak to me again. 3 days later, he was back in my messages begging to see me. But the guy that I was on a date with actually really likes me and asked me to be his girlfriend. I don't know what to do. I love my ex and I want to get back with him, but I know he's crazy. But this new guy's really nice and really caring. What do I do?
Am I the asshole for having my wedding ceremony in sign language? I'm 24 female, deaf, and growing up my parents got me bilateral cochlear implants and forced me into mainstream school. Never taught me sign language and never immersed me into my culture as a deaf person. They were actually pretty against me using ASL at all. Well, I took ASL in high school against my parents' wishes and then got into a deaf university. Although I couldn't sign fluently when I started, I finally felt accepted and understood. The deaf community was nothing but welcoming. I became fluent in ASL, and after a few months, I stopped wearing my processors completely as there was no need for them anymore. I honestly didn't realize how alone I had felt until I didn't feel that way anymore. I met my fiance at college. He is from a very large family of deaf people, and everyone is fluent in sign. We've been together 4 years now. He proposed last May. We've been planning the wedding and have decided to have it fully in ASL. My extended family of hearing people is very small. We decided to get an interpreter for the hearing people, though, so they'd know what was going on. Our wedding is in August, so we just sent the invites. The invite mentions that it will be in ASL, but we'll have an interpreter for those who are, quote, signing impaired, which is kind of just a joke. But my mom started texting me and tried to convince me that it should be in English and have an ASL interpreter. I feel like it's our wedding, so we should have it in our first language, and my mom thinks that we are in America, so English should be the first language. And anyone who doesn't choose to get cured, aka get an implant, should get an interpreter. She also said it was disrespectful to say signing impaired. I don't think she realizes the irony, as she always refers to me as hearing impaired. My mom also says that the deaf people should be used to having interpreters, whereas she's never had one before. Am I the asshole here?
Hell no.